I stared at the gaping hole where my front door used to be. A sharp, ragged wound in the heart of my life. My breath hitched. A silent gasp caught in my throat. This couldn't be real. The cold morning air rushed in, carrying the acrid scent of sawdust and fresh destruction. Just last night, I'd been sitting on the couch, reviewing case files. The familiar hum of the refrigerator a comforting backdrop. Now, it was just gone. Oh, for goodness sake. Look at this mess. A shrill voice cut through my disbelief. I turned slowly, my mind still trying to process the sheer audacity of it all. Standing on my lawn, arms crossed, a sneer plastered on her face, was Deborah Vance, the HOA president and self-proclaimed queen of the cul-de-sac. Her expensive sunglasses couldn't hide the gleam of self-satisfaction in her eyes. I told you that hedge was a violation. Didn't I tell you? And look at what you've done now. My gaze dropped to the small, immaculately trimmed boxwood hedge, still perfectly in place beside the rubble. A low, dangerous rumble started deep in my chest. The hedge. What on earth are you talking about? Deborah, I managed to say, my voice unervingly calm. Her laugh was a grating, triumphant sound. Oh, don't play dumb with me. Judge, I've seen the paperwork. I gave you a notice last month, but you chose to ignore it. So, I took matters into my own hands. The HOA voted to remove the offending structure. She gestured with a theatrical sweep of her hand toward my now exposed living room. My home. The place where I made my coffee every morning. Where my late husband's favorite recliner still sat. A testament to a love long since past. The fury that had been a low rumble now roared to life. You had my house demolished for a hedge. My voice was barely a whisper, thick with disbelief and a rising, terrifying rage. The construction foreman, a burly man named Gus with a worn leather vest, stepped forward, his face etched with confusion. Ma'am, we were told to take down the unauthorized structure at 76 Birchwood Lane. Mrs. Vance showed us the paperwork and gave us the go-ahead. He pointed to a pristine, untouched document he was holding. That's when it clicked. Gus held a work order for 76 Birchwood Lane. My address was 76 Birchwood Avenue. A small, but crucial, detail. I watched Deborah's face, the smug smile faltering. Just for a second. That's all I needed. The truth, like a jagged shard of glass, had just pierced her carefully constructed narrative. Ah, I see. A simple clerical error. Is that it? Deborah, I said, the venom in my voice finally breaking through the calm exterior. The color drained from her face as she looked from Gus to the work order, and then back to my shattered home. She stammered. It's a mistake. A simple mistake. It's an honest mistake. But it was too late. I was already pulling out my phone, my fingers flying over the screen. This wasn't just a dispute anymore. This was a crime. As a sitting judge, I was all too familiar with the delicate dance of evidence, motive, and intent. And I saw all three here, laid out on my front lawn. No, Deborah, a mistake is when you put too much salt in the soup. This, I swept my arm out toward the wreckage, is a crime. This is malicious destruction of property, trespassing, and fraud. Gus's eyes widened. He and his crew were just following orders, but they were now complicit. He looked terrified. The sound of a neighbor's door opening, then another, drew my attention. The street, usually quiet at this hour, was now alive with whispers and gasps. This was the moment I had been waiting for. The truth was out, and the performance had just begun. My hands, though trembling slightly with suppressed emotion, were steady as I dialed the police. The confrontation, which had started as a pathetic display of HOA power, was now a public spectacle. As I spoke to the dispatcher, I could see Deborah's bravado crumbling. She was no longer the queen of anything. She was just a woman who had made a catastrophic error in judgment and was now facing the consequences. Deborah, I'm going to give you one chance. Just one, I said, my voice low and serious. You can tell these people what you did. You can admit to everything right here and now. And maybe, just maybe, this won't be as bad as it could be. But pride, that stubborn, suffocating blanket, had her in its grip. I don't know what you're talking about. It was a mistake. A mistake. It's your fault for not being clear about your address. She shrieked, her voice cracking. My address is on every single piece of mail, every official document, and every single deed in this entire town. It's on my mailbox. And you know it. My voice had risen to meet hers now, the raw frustration finally boiling over. Gus, the foreman, stepped forward, his face ashen. I'm so sorry. Ma'am, we were given a work order. We didn't know. I cut him off with a raised hand. I know. Gus, I know. You were just doing your job. The person responsible for this will be held accountable. I promise you that. The words were for him. But the message was for Deborah. My gaze bore into hers, cold and unwavering. It was over. She was on her own. The police arrived. Then the media, drawn by the commotion. The quiet cul-de-sac became a maelstrom of flashing lights, reporters' shouts, and buzzing cell phone cameras. Deborah, once so confident, was now a small, whimpering figure, her hair disheveled, her expensive clothes stained with dust. My neighbors, initially shocked and silent, began to speak up, sharing their own stories of Deborah's petty tyranny. The woman who had meticulously policed their lawn gnomes and paint colors was now a public pariah. The tide had turned, the community's quiet resentment finally spilling over. As a reporter shoved a microphone in my face, I took a deep breath, composed myself, and began to speak. This is not about a hedge. This is not about an HOA. This is about a person who thought their power, their arrogance, could supersede the law. It's a sobering reminder that we all have a responsibility to our community, to our neighbors, and to the truth. My voice was calm and measured, a judge in her own right, delivering a verdict not from a bench, but from the wreckage of her life. The final twist came not from me, but from Gus, the foreman, who had quietly been speaking with a police officer. We found something, he said, stepping forward. He held a small, crumpled piece of paper. It was a second work order, handwritten, with my correct address, but with the words disregard, use 76, Birchwood Lane instead scrawled across it in what looked like Deborah's distinctive, loopy handwriting. The evidence, the motive, the intent. It was all there. Deborah's desperate lies, her attempts to shift the blame. All of it came crashing down. The air seemed to hold its breath. A collective gasp from the crowd. Deborah let out a choked sob and collapsed onto her knees. A broken woman surrounded by the ruins she had created. The sound of handcuffs clicking into place was the final, devastating punctuation mark on her reign. As I stood there, watching her being led away, a strange sense of calm washed over me. The house was gone, but the foundation was still there. The neighbors, once intimidated, now stood with me, a united front. And I, the sitting judge, had just learned a powerful lesson about justice and community. A lesson that sometimes the most profound verdicts are delivered outside of a courtroom, with the whole world as the jury. I started to walk towards Gus, putting a hand on his shoulder. Thank you, Gus. You did the right thing, I said, my voice full of gratitude. He just nodded, his eyes welling up. The community, once fractured by a Karen's whim, was finally healing. The story wasn't about vengeance. It was about justice. It was about standing up for what was right, even when it felt like your world had been torn apart. But what do you think? Was my response to Deborah's actions justified? Or was it an overreaction? Is there a line between righting a wrong and seeking revenge? I'd love to hear your thoughts.